Pat Anderson along with Daryl Westmoreland. This is the All Access Pass video series, and we're going to talk about meet and greets, artist meet and greets.
Yes.
With Daryl's vast experience working with concert venues, record companies, and I've been in radio for about 30 years, meet and greets, that's a term that you hear when you, the fan, get a chance to meet the artist, go backstage, get an autograph, get a picture, but meet and greets have kind of changed over the years. And
True.
Some artists do them, some artists don't, but going back to the
early years
of meet and greets, they were a little bit different. So Daryl really, with his working with record labels back in starting early 70s and specifically like 1976, meet and greets were different than they were today. So describe to us the scene of meet and greets back in the late 70s and how they were different from today.
Well, working with the radio and record industry, the meet and greets usually happen with the artist. I become part of the entourage, so we roll up to radio stations, get out, take the artists, introduce them, play some music, they'll be on the air, and then we'll take some pictures of the DJ and or the program director, music director of that particular station. So we do these shots, and a lot of the times most people don't understand that these pictures ended up in the trade magazines back in the day. That was the only way you would ever see my images. You had to be Record World, R&R, Billboard. There was Cashbox. There was a bunch of them.
Gavin Report, radio and records.
Yes.
Anybody who was anybody in radio had these publications on their desk.
Correct.
And it was like the Bible.
Correct.
There was no internet.
No.
So it was all of your information came from these publications that came to your desk Monday morning.
Yes. And so a lot of my images from these meet and greets ended up in these trade magazines or whatever, newspapers. So that usually, those images were with key radio people that maybe were playing the music at the time, and maybe the first station is, okay, I'm playing it, you know, and then maybe a month later everybody else is playing it. So whoever breaks it, the single or the album or whatever. But anyway, the meet and greet, so that was one of the aspects of shooting meet and greets. Then the other one was at the concerts. So after the concert was when we always shot meet and greets. So it was always late at night. But still, that's where the again, it was all about the radio stations, no matter what, because they were the ones. If they played your song off your album, then you were a hit. I mean, or that's how you got it played. Whether it became a hit was another thing. But anyway, so with that being said, then I would shoot meet and greets after the concerts. So I was always at all the concerts, the shows. That was one way. That was another way that we would work the artist and the music industry, because a lot of times those meet and greets also included some of the distributors of the records, record stores, and there were Peaches and Tower back in those days, which were huge. I mean, these people had a lot, or these companies or stores had a lot of pull, because they would buy like X amount of units or albums, and they could buy thousands. Well, then their sales go up. And then there was the party meet and greets. Those were wild.
There's several different factions.
Levels of meet and greets.
You will find in the world that Daryl has traversed over the years, where in the late 70s and into the 80s and even into the 90s, it was a different landscape than it is today. There was a lot of money in record companies, in record stores, in delivering music on those particular type of platforms. Now, it's unfathomable to think about it because you have the internet and digital music, but back in the day, there was none. LP, cassette, 8-track even.
Yep.
That, I mean, those physical units, those were going out the door and being promoted by the fact that people would see Daryl's images, whether they were in
trade
publications, at the concerts, at the radio stations, being talked about on the air. A lot of this bred the excitement and brought it to like a pinnacle peak, where it was like, bands that were just, starting out, like we're talking about Van Halen or Bob Seger, who was really reaching his peak with Night Moves back in 1976. This all really worked together to promote the artist, and with record companies signing artists to long album deals, like 3, 5,
albums or whatever,
10 album deals, they were working these artists over a period of time. So there was a lot of work that was going on.
Right, and that's where
this was a fun time.
Exactly, and that's where the meet and greets came in, because like I said, at the parties, at the parties that they had, they invited everybody, all the radio stations. So if there was 6 radio stations, and in the market that I worked in, they called it P1 stations, which is the top stations. I mean, if they play your music, you're there.
Yeah, P1 was a major market
yes.
radio station.
And so anyway, they would invite everybody, and when they did, I would shoot all these meet and greets with the artists, and then the artists would sign, pictures, whatever. And then what would happen is I would make contact sheets, as they called them back in the day, where you lay all the negatives out per roll, and then with that being said, I would take them to the record rep, and he would circle what he wanted and how many he wanted. So on this artist or this image right here, he might say, oh, I want 5 copies because there's 5 people in there. So what he would do is he would distribute the 8x10s to whoever was in the meet and greets.
Right.
But then there were always a certain shots that were made where they had really, really key people at the time, and those images they would order more because they would send them to the trades. Yeah. So this is how these the meet and greets were how they promoted the artists at the time.
And how record companies kind of promoted themselves and the industry really as a whole, because Daryl would take pictures of the record rep with his boss and the head of the record label and the Northwest rep, and maybe the regional rep was in there.
Right.
So it really became sort of a corporate way to really capture the moments with these artists that were on tour,
right,
that everybody was so invested in.
And a lot of times the artists weren't even on tours. They would come in because they were promoting their single or their album, but they weren't yet on concert or on tour.
Right.
So it was usually that would happen prior. But these artists with these meet and greets, this was how they promoted them, regionally or locally.
It was a big deal.
It was actually it was an extremely big deal until the digital age came along, and now it's you take the pictures and usually the individuals get them. You know what I'm saying?
It sucked. It really went from being awesome to really sucking.
I don't know. I have still a good time. What do you mean?
The 90s. Well, you were a big part of it being awesome. But what had happened is if the record company gives me a disposable camera and says, take pictures of your contest winners.
Yeah, actually, that's a good point that you just made, because there was a period up until about, I think it was somewhere in the upper 90s or almost 2000, this record companies weren't hiring me anymore because they weren't funding anything, because they were, they were out of money. They actually were out of money because they invested so much buying up other labels. But anyway,
and investing in artists that sucked.
Yeah.
And so there wasn't any money for Daryl.
No. And so you're right. You brought your disposable camera or your little point and shoot camera. And then what happened was the digital age came along, and now everybody's got their cell phones.
Sure.
And the problem with that is everybody's taking pictures no matter what.
But the problem with that is too, Daryl, is everybody takes crappy pictures with
Well,
themselves.
we know that, but what happened was...
You go from a professional concert photographer with 50 years of experience to you and your crappy Snapchat filter.
Yeah, well, they don't care,
photo,
you know, sort of.
So it's like, there's a big discrepancy there. But things really changed.
So now what's happening, strangely enough, the industry is not happy with all these people taking pictures backstage. So now they put a stop to that, and they're starting to hire people like me again.
That's good.
I mean, yeah, it's good for me.
Finally, yeah.
Finally.
So here's a little, can I tell a little story about Daryl? So I've been in broadcasting for like 30 years, 29 years. And a lot of the artists that KDUX would give away concert tickets to, and we would take artists to meet backstage, and we would do promotional meet and greets before or after the show. Daryl would be the photographer. Daryl and I didn't know each other, would be there, but that's just what Daryl would do, and this is what I do, but we're from the same area, and pretty soon we would meet in Seattle, or we'd meet in Tacoma and be like, hey, good to see you. So I'm at an Aerosmith show, and this is back in 1996, probably 97, and Daryl is shooting the Aerosmith pre-show, and everybody's on the elevator to get off of the elevator to come into the meet and greet, and Daryl comes in first. Following Daryl is Steven Tyler and the rest of the band. So, and I see Daryl, I go, oh great, Daryl, I know Daryl. But Daryl was like, he's with the band. I mean, he's coming off of the elevator with Steven Tyler. And I'm going, that's pretty impressive. So Daryl would take the shots. He would see me and say, hey, how's it going? I go, pretty good. So he would take all of the photos of my listeners, our contest winners, and all that kind of stuff. And, you know, Steven Tyler would be there. Hey, Daryl, how's it going? Good to see you. Oh, I haven't seen you since Boston, you know? Like, that's pretty cool. So when Steven Tyler knows your name when you come off the elevator, that's kind of a cool thing. But I would see Daryl in a lot of different capacities over the years, taking pictures backstage, whether it be at Seattle Center Coliseum, Mercer Arena.
Correct,
We did that.
Tacoma Dome.
Tacoma Dome, and a lot of different venues in Key Arena now. So the meet and greets now are a lot different, where if you get a meet and greet, you're lucky, or you paid $1,000.
You paid a lot of money. It's all about money now on meet and greets.
And here's what happens. You line up to the right of the stage, single file line, you've paid your $1,000, or you know a really cool dude like me or Daryl, and then you get into the meet and greet. And you march single file with the +1 by the artist. They take a quick picture and they move you on your way. If you're lucky, the artist might look you in the eye. Maybe. And then they'll get you on.
And a lot of them do not touch the artist. Just go stand by them. Take the picture. Next.
Don't breathe on them.
Whatever.
So, to give you a little more background on meet and greets, it's like if you go through security at the airport. Take off your shoes, walk single file line, don't have anything sharp in your pocket, and then look straight ahead. And then you'll get to meet the artist, maybe take a picture, and then they'll get you on your way. Meet and greets today are a drag. There are a lot of bands that do them well, but you know, if you have to pay $1,000 for a meet and greet and you're in and out within 10 seconds, kind of sucks. But back in the day, Daryl was able to capture a lot of those elements in this book, which we're pretty proud of, that he put together. It's called Snap, Click, Flash, All Access Pass, and this is our video series. We'll be talking about it a lot more. I'm Pat Anderson, along with Daryl Westmoreland.